history of migration from Nepal to all the way to the United States. First of all, he was tortured in Nepal for campaigning for Tibet by the police, and then he thought that his life was in jeopardy, and he wanted to pursue a kind of a better life, and then he fled from there, and then went to India. From there, he went to one of those South American countries. I think that the first entry was in Peru or something else. And then through different countries, he managed to come to Mexico, and from Mexico he managed to come to the United States, and he's seeking asylum. So the Tibetan refugees, in a nutshell, are having a real difficult time because of the Chinese government's kind of interference on Nepal's government to say that take care of them. We don't want any anti-Chinese activities in your territory.
That's right.
So that is creating a lot of trouble for the Tibetan refugees who want a very peaceful life. So there is a real difficulties there. The problem is there, lying there. People are having real tough time. So, and then U.S. government has been very much tremendously helpful for Arab Spring. Well, do you think the U.S. and the rest of the other freedom-loving countries are doing enough in helping the Tibetans get Tibet back?
Well, of course, the footprint of China on the world stage is a big one now. The Tibetan struggle, including what we're seeing with the self-immolations and the protests going on as we speak in Tibet, the flight of Tibetan refugees that continues from Tibet through Nepal to India. These are manifestations of a struggle that against oppression that has not stopped. The Chinese are intent on controlling the Tibetan people, of assimilating them into the greater China. This is a precious civilization, culture, again, that Nepal has great affinity towards. I mean, I imagine the Nepali people could see themselves if the People's Republic of China moved over the Himalayas into Nepal, what would happen to their own precious culture.
Last year, I think you had written one article at the Wall Street Journal, in which article you had advocated that Dalai Lama should be called by China to have a peaceful dialogue, have a peaceful negotiations for what could be the outcome to exist in coexistence together. So that's a very good wishful thinking that you had in that article, and then Richard Gere had always been saying the same thing, and then Dalai Lama himself was that. So where do you think is this the possibility of dialogue is being minimized? Which party is minimizing this possibility of dialogue?
I still believe in the dialogue, and I believe a negotiated solution is possible. We're in a period now where the Chinese are changing leadership. That makes them very rigid. People who have power are going to make sure that their legacy is untarnished. People who are aspiring to power are not going to do anything to jeopardize their ability to achieve power. So we are not in a very promising time as far as securing the will of the Chinese leadership. We also have instability in Tibet right now. We have these demonstrations that are spreading across Tibet. This real confrontation of Chinese authority and saying, we want our freedoms, we want His Holiness to come back. So it's a very supercharged situation right now. But I do believe that as more Chinese understand, and it's inevitable that they will, understand what are the true aspirations of the Tibetan people, what are the real grievances of the Tibetan people, where they can find common bond with the Tibetan people. I think there's that, there will be a resolution if the entire world, almost, sees Tibet as such a precious resource, as such a precious culture, that reveres His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a great spiritual guru, if this happens all over the world, why would it not happen inside China?
Exactly.
Of course it will.
So what is the possible role the ICT and the UNHCR could work together? Are there some projects going on already?
The UN High Commissioner for Refugees operates a transit center for Tibetan refugees who are coming through Nepal territory on their way to India.
Under a gentleman's agreement, I guess.
Under something called the Gentleman's Agreement, which is an agreement between the UNHCR and the Nepal government. And that agreement says that Tibetans who enter Nepali territory shall have safe passage through onward to India. And when they are apprehended in Nepal, they are processed by the Immigration Department in Nepal and then turned over to the UNHCR and taken to this refugee transit center. That refugee transit center is paid for by a contribution to the UNHCR by the United States government. So one of the things that the International Campaign for Tibet does, it reminds policymakers that there is this need, and make sure that that appropriation of funding continues. And as new needs arise, for example, when I was just there was a need expressed to me for a Tibetan woman to be in residence at the refugee center, because some of these young people who come out need a mother figure, just somebody who they can, this is a very scary proposition, you can imagine, to be leaving your homeland. And there needs to be somebody like that who can provide that kind of maternal care. That's a very human quality. That's not a big thing, but it's a small ask that ICT will then, of course, take to the UNHCR and urge them to make that position available, possible there at the...
Great. Thank you, Madam Markey, for giving us your time to this talk.
My pleasure.
And we appreciate your valuable suggestions to this movement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Yes.
The audience, with all this, we would like to wrap up tonight's American Conversations. Good night and namaste.